So, should you take a spore-based probiotic? If you've been dealing with chronic gut issues, maybe inflammation, maybe SIBO, IBS, all of those sorts of things, you've probably heard this popular idea called a spore-based probiotic. They are known for surviving the stomach acid and actually making it into the small intestines alive. But here's what most people don't know. You can actually grow these spore-based probiotics at home in your own kitchen with the soil from your garden, as long as it's a clean soil. Our ancestors were exposed to these soil-based probiotics on a regular basis. It is what caused their immune systems to be so robust. They were constantly gardening with their hands. They were constantly consuming food that hadn't been washed and bleached and chlorinated. And so it had all of the microbes from the earth. And it created a microbiome, a gut microbiome, that was really, truly resilient. In this video, I'm going to break down what spore-based probiotics are, whether or not you should take the pill form of spore-based probiotics that are constantly being marketed to you, and how you can also create a natural version of these same microbes at home safely. So let's jump in. So first, what exactly are spore-based probiotics? Spore-based probiotics are a subtype of soil-based organisms. Very common types of spore-based probiotics are Bacillus subtilis, Bacillus coagulans. These are some of the more researched strains of spore-based probiotics that have been known to have tons of benefits. But when they're spore-based, that basically means that they form this natural, hard, protective coating around the microorganism. The microorganism sort of goes dormant, and this protective shell actually allows the bacteria to survive the harsh conditions in the stomach, which is very acidic, usually will kill a percentage of bacteria that comes through the stomach. It will also allow it to survive bile flow and even heat. So they make it all the way to your intestines, and they sort of activate once they hit the small intestinal lining. The moisture and the nutrients there basically sort of wake it up, and it starts to proliferate and grow and multiply and inhabit the microbiome of your gut. They help to balance your microbiome just like any probiotic does. They help to seal the gut lining, and they even produce digestive enzymes and antimicrobial compounds that fight off bad bacteria. And the crazy part is about spore-based probiotics is that they are really effective even in small doses. So just taking a little speck of it could be enough for somebody who needs some digestive support. They're also shelf stable, so you don't have to keep them in a fridge, and that means you can also travel with them. And the reason people love them so much is because in these double-blind placebo control studies in clinical research, they were shown to reduce bloating, burping, and flatulence in just under 6 weeks. And I think some of the reason for the effectiveness of spore-based probiotics is that they stay in the intestines longer. Spore-based probiotics stay in the intestines for 3 to 4 weeks, whereas regular probiotics will stay in there only for 4 to 7 days, you guys. So you actually have to continually be taking just regular probiotic supplements if you want to see the effectiveness of them, whereas spore-based probiotics, you actually can see the benefits for weeks on end. Now, the big question for me as somebody who always prefers to use food first before supplements is, can we make this at home? Is this something that you could make with your own homemade ferments? Is it something that you could replicate without the lab? And technically, yes, in a way. I'm going to explain kind of what I mean. There is no way to technically isolate the exact strains that have been studied and researched to reduce all of those symptoms that I mentioned before. There's no way to isolate the bacillus strains that do that, but you can create a soil-based ferment using clean, chemical-free soil and filtered water. This process of fermentation actually encourages the growth of beneficial microbes, and with it, the growth of spore-based probiotics, if I can even call it that. I mean, technically, it is the original. It's not just a spore-based product. It is literally these spores in the final product. And yes, many of these final products actually do include the spore formers, these bacillus species that I was just mentioning. Now, this method mimics ancestral exposure to dirt. You would have been gardening a lot. Your vegetables wouldn't have been washed. You would have been drinking from fresh spring water that all had bacteria. It all had microbes in it. This is something that most of us have lost, and because of it, our microbiomes are actually usually pretty weak to this. So whenever you go ahead and introduce some sort of homemade fermented soil-based probiotic, you want to go really slow because it's going to be much stronger than even your typical probiotic. It's going to have more of the bacteria from the earth in it, and it's going to cause more die-off. I talk about die-off a lot here on my channel, but it basically means that it's going to introduce the beneficial species that you need in order to kill off some of the pathogenic species, and you might notice symptoms that result from those pathogens dying off. The biggest debate here is whether or not you can actually find soil that is truly uncontaminated, because most of our soils in our backyards have been contaminated through runoff from our neighbor using pesticides or our own pesticide use, or you never know who was actually gardening in your garden like years before you even purchased your home. Like, how do you know that your soil is actually truly clean? And I think that's a big question for anybody in America who is living under, quite frankly, chemicals being poured out from our skies. So it's really actually technically hard to know. And this is part of the argument for using a spore-based probiotic capsule that you can find at a store or online, because you know that those are clean and pure and there's no sort of contamination. Now, that being said, there's actually a lot of research to prove that homemade ferments, if you actually make sauerkraut, the beneficial microbes actually eat up the pesticides. So to some degree or another, there's a large percentage of the pesticides get eaten up by microbes in the fermentation process. So you're always better off fermenting anyway, but you're going to get a large amount of those toxins and contaminants just taken care of with the fermentation process. As long as there's enough salt, as long as it's not growing mold or anything like that. I think there's been a huge wave of people trying to move away from these sort of homemade methods of fermenting because of fear of E. coli and Clostridium. I mean, there's a lot of different diseases that are kind of quote unquote coming out that are scaring people away from making their own homemade ferments at home and buying the spore-based probiotics that you find on the market. This really has to be your choice of whether you decide to do that or not, what you feel like is the safest option for you. But I will say, having fermented my own vegetables at home, I've never noticed a negative impact from it. If anything, I've only noticed positive benefits from it. In this book, Becky Plotner actually talks a lot about that there is kind of a movement against the homemade fermented foods for this reason. They're telling pregnant women never to drink them. They are just recommending that you stay away from them completely out of fear. And this sort of fear around ferments is something that Becky Plotner talks about. One could argue that there is an agenda against our health. And so it's something to consider that these were things that we've done for centuries. Now, we haven't been dealing with this level of toxicity for centuries, so our soils were never as contaminated. But nonetheless, we've been reaping the benefits of soil-based organisms for centuries. So what's my take on whether you should take spore-based probiotics or even making them at home? I personally believe that there is a place for both approaches. It's really up to you. But I have seen countless testimonies of people using targeted spore-based probiotic supplements and seeing great results, particularly people who have SIBO, who have candida overgrowth, who really need something that has the strains that actually stay in the gut for longer periods of time. But if you are like me and you want to use food first, the traditional soil-based probiotic homemade ferments at home are some of the best options that you can do. You can basically make your own wild ferments. And I think this develops a level of deeper resilience than just targeting one specific strain. I think there are probably countless other strains that haven't been studied that also have some of those amazing benefits. And we just wouldn't know because we're not necessarily doing all these blind placebo studies on them. So that being said, I have linked below some of the best spore-based probiotics on the market right now. If you're interested in giving them a try, like I said, I think you totally can make these at home. And if you're interested in a video on that, go ahead and leave a comment below and I will be sure to make a video tutorial on how to make your own spore-based probiotics at home in your own kitchen. If you're on a gut healing journey and you really want to go deeper, learn how to use food as medicine to start healing and repairing your gut lining, I have a free Food as Medicine Masterclass, which I'll have linked in the description as well, that goes through the 3 most important foods for healing your gut and repairing your overall health. I'm really a believer that all disease begins in the gut. And so if you can start to repair the gut, repopulate the gut microbiome with all the beneficial microbes and detox the body, you can overcome nearly any chronic illness out there. So go ahead and check that out. And if you got any value out of this video, like the video. And for more root cause gut health related content, subscribe to my channel. We would love to have you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.